What does it truly mean to grow up? We assume that the passing of years delivers wisdom, that birthdays bring depth, that age itself makes us whole. But if that were true, why do so many souls wander through adulthood still haunted by the same insecurities they carried as children? Why do patterns repeat, relationships breaking in familiar ways, choices circling back to the same disappointments, dreams dissolving before they even begin? Age is inevitable, but maturity is something far rarer. It is not given by time. It is earned through inner transformation. Carl Jung once wrote that, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how many of us ever take that privilege seriously? How many of us confuse the appearance of maturity, responsibility, control, image with its reality? True maturity is not surface level. It is not performance. It is an awakening, a courage to step beyond the unconscious chains of childhood and society and into the unshakable ground of selfhood. And so the question lingers in the silence of your heart. Have you grown older, or have you truly grown up? But if age is not the same as maturity, what keeps so many of us from crossing that threshold? The chaos within. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a breath. Notice the storm of thoughts that rushes through you. The doubts, the overthinking, the constant noise of a restless mind. This is where immaturity often hides, in the chaos within. The ego seeks control. It clings to safety, to patterns, to what is familiar, even when those patterns bring pain. Emotional baggage becomes armor. Old wounds whisper, "Don't step forward. Stay where it's comfortable. Stay small." The immature self is like a sailor lost at sea. The waves of emotion crash endlessly, and without an anchor of self-awareness, she drifts wherever the current pulls. Anxiety, comparison, dependency. This is not living, it is survival. And yet beneath the storm lies something timeless, the vast sky of your being. Maturity is not about silencing the storm. It is about remembering that you are the sky, not the weather, that you are more than the passing waves of fear and desire. To step into maturity is to anchor yourself in that vastness, to find stillness even when the storm rages. But how do we lose touch with that stillness in the first place? The masks we wear from childhood, we are taught to wear masks. Be polite, be agreeable, be pretty, be pleasing. And so we grow into adults who confuse masks with maturity. A mask can smile even when the heart is breaking. A mask can play the role of the responsible one, the selfless one, the put-together one. But beneath the mask, the soul remains young, unfinished, untested. This false maturity is a performance for the world, not a transformation of the self. And the tragedy is that society rewards the performance. Approval, attention, acceptance, they come when the mask stays on. But the inner voice knows the truth. When the lights go out, when the roles fade, when silence surrounds you, who are you then? Do you feel strong, whole, independent? Or do you feel the fragility of the mask, the emptiness of pretending? True maturity begins when we dare to take the mask off, to see ourselves not as we were told to be, but as we really are, raw, imperfect, unfinished, but real. And yet for many, the mask is not chosen freely. It is born from childhood itself. The chains of childhood. Imagine a bird raised inside a cage. The world outside is vast, but her wings never learn the strength of flight. One day the cage is open, but instead of soaring, she trembles. Freedom feels like danger. The open sky feels like death. This is what happens when childhood is overprotected. When parents shield a child from failure, risk, and responsibility, they believe they are protecting her, but in truth, they are binding her wings. She grows into a woman who fears the very weight of her own choices. Every decision feels overwhelming. Every challenge feels impossible. And so she looks outward for someone to guide her. Partners, friends, authority figures, anyone to carry the responsibility she never learned to hold. Maturity requires struggle. Resilience is not born in safety, but in trial. Without hardship, there is no growth. Without risk, there is no courage. And so many women remain caged, not by circumstance, but by the unconscious imprint of a childhood where independence was never allowed to grow. But childhood leaves not only chains of safety, it leaves wounds that echo for a lifetime. The wounds we carry some children are not overprotected. Instead, they are wounded. Betrayal, neglect, abuse, loss. These leave scars that time alone cannot heal. A wound carried into adulthood whispers in the dark, "Don't trust. Don't step forward. Don't take responsibility. You'll only be hurt again." And so a woman avoids her own power. Responsibility feels like a burden too heavy to bear. Independence feels unsafe. To grow feels terrifying. Instead of facing the wound, she may cling to others for safety or retreat into avoidance. But the wound remains unhealed, shaping every choice from the shadows. Carl Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These wounds are the unconscious forces that keep us young long after our bodies age. Healing begins not by denying the wound, but by meeting it, by daring to look at the pain with compassion instead of fear, by realizing that maturity is not the absence of scars, it is the strength to carry them with grace. But if childhood and trauma bind us, what about the culture we live in? How does society itself encourage immaturity? The cage of culture. It is not only childhood that binds us. Society itself becomes a cage. From an early age, women are taught that their worth is measured not by inner strength, but by outer appearance. The culture whispers, "Be beautiful, be likable, be agreeable." Approval becomes the currency of identity. Social media amplifies this conditioning. The constant gaze of others becomes a mirror in which many lose themselves. A woman learns to perform her worth, smiling, pleasing, curating, while her true self grows quiet beneath the noise. But Jung warned that what is not made conscious controls us. This cultural script creates women who confuse performance with being, validation with value, attention with love. And the tragedy is that society rewards this immaturity. The eternal girl is celebrated, while the mature woman, independent, wise, whole, is often feared or dismissed. To step beyond this cage is to step into discomfort. It is to no longer play the role assigned, but to live from authenticity. This is the beginning of individuation, the sacred path to becoming whole. But what form does this cultural conditioning take inside the psyche? Jung gave it a name, the eternal girl archetype. Jung called her the Puella Eterna, the eternal girl. She is radiant, lighthearted, playful, yet she resists the gravity of adulthood. She avoids responsibility, fears commitment, and clings to the identity of youth. On the surface, she appears free, but beneath the charm lies dependency. She waits for life to carry her rather than carrying herself. She hopes someone else will write her story rather than daring to hold the pen. This archetype is not evil. It is not wrong. It is simply incomplete. It represents a stage of life that has not yet been surrendered. The eternal girl has not yet faced her shadow, and so she hides in the illusion of innocence. But the danger is clear. What was once youthful becomes stagnant. The dream of eternal youth becomes a prison. But how exactly does the eternal girl show up in real life? Her illusions are clearest in the way she views love. Romantic illusions. The eternal girl often believes that love will save her. She imagines romance as a fairy tale where the perfect partner appears to rescue her from the weight of responsibility. She projects her wholeness onto another, believing happiness will come when she is chosen, adored, completed. But love built on a rescue is fragile. Partners who enter such dynamics either enable dependency or control it. Real intimacy, the meeting of two whole beings, cannot emerge when one remains unfinished. Jung taught that every person carries an inner counterpart, the anima or animus. When unintegrated, it projects outward, creating fantasies of salvation. The eternal girl does not yet know her inner masculine, so she waits endlessly for him to appear in human form. But no one can complete you. Only by integrating your inner wholeness can love become real. And when love fails to save her, the eternal girl looks elsewhere, to freedom from responsibility itself. The flight from responsibility for the eternal girl, responsibility feels like death. Jobs become cages, commitments become burdens, structure feels suffocating, so she floats. She drifts from one interest to another, one passion to the next, always searching for excitement, but never staying long enough to grow roots. It is a life of endless beginnings but no true becoming. This resistance to responsibility is immaturity disguised as freedom. True freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the courage to carry it, to create, to endure, to shape one's life deliberately. Jung believed that maturity requires struggle. The refusal to struggle keeps us in a prolonged adolescence. The eternal girl wishes for life to be all play, all novelty, all lightness, but the soul starves without depth. And beneath this avoidance lies her deepest fear of all, the fear of time itself. The fear of time. For the eternal girl, youth is not just a season of life, it is her identity. Beauty, attention, charm, these become her sources of value. And so aging feels like erasure. The first wrinkle is not a natural mark of time, but a wound to the soul. Clinging to youth becomes her survival. She resists the wisdom of aging, trading authenticity for cosmetics, depth for appearance, independence for validation. But the more she clings, the more fragile she becomes. Maturity means something different. It means seeing age not as loss, but as revelation. It means discovering that beauty was never in youth, but in wholeness. That true power is not in the admiration of others, but in the integration of the self. Time is not the enemy. Time is the teacher, and the eternal girl cannot grow until she learns to embrace its lessons. But where do these lessons truly unfold? In the hidden terrain of the shadow. The shadow, feminine shadow, is the room we keep dark because we fear what lives there. In Jung's language, it is the unlived life, the traits exiled to survive the gaze of others. For many women, that room holds unacceptable treasures: clarity, ambition, boundary, anger, erotic aliveness, ruthless honesty. Not because they are wrong, but because they were labeled too much. So these powers went underground. They returned as envy, burnout, people-pleasing, chronic doubt. What we refuse to own owns us. The suppressed lion becomes a restless house cat, pacing the edges of a polite life. Imagine a river buried under a city. You can pave it, redirect it, build quiet gardens above it. Still it pushes, searching for daylight. When a woman denies her river, it floods as mood swings, numbness, indecision, or an ache she cannot name. Shadow work is not self-attack, it is sacred reunion. Sit with the part that interrupts, that says no, that wants more. Ask her what boundary was crossed, what hunger was dismissed, what dream was traded for safety. She will answer, though at first in symbols, images, and inconvenient emotions. Remember, anger is unprotected love. Ambition is devotion with direction. Independence is intimacy with oneself. Integrating these is not becoming hard, it is becoming whole. Wholeness asks for rhythm. Express, rest, repair, repeat. Practice small risks until your nervous system trusts your voice fully. If the shadow is a room, what happens when we open the door and step inside with a lamp? The hidden self is waiting to be met. The moment of reflection. Close your eyes now. Allow silence to touch you. Feel the inhale rise in your belly, the exhale soften your shoulders. Notice how the body breathes without effort, how life moves through you even when the mind wrestles for control. This moment is not about thinking, it is about listening. Beneath the chatter, beneath the anxieties, there is a quiet pulse, a hum of being. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Let this be your awakening. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake. The surface ripples with every passing thought. Fear distorts it. Desire stirs it. But when you stop grasping, the water clears, and beneath it, the reflection is whole. That lake is your psyche. That stillness is always there, waiting to be remembered. Ask yourself gently, what masks am I wearing? What do I run from? Which parts of me have I silenced to stay loved? Do not rush to answer. Let the questions echo like bells in a valley. Your soul will respond in its own time. Feel your feet on the ground. Imagine roots growing into the earth, steady and unshakable. You are not drifting, you are held. Notice how much strength lives in stillness. You do not need to perform here. You do not need to prove anything. Carry this feeling with you. Reflection is not escape, it is return. Each pause you take is a doorway to yourself. But awakening is only the beginning. To live fully, we must walk a deeper path. The path Jung called individuation. The path of individuation. Individuation, a word Jung used to describe the journey of becoming whole. Not perfect, not flawless, whole. Most of us live fragmented. One part of us performs for approval, another hides in fear, another still longs for freedom but doesn't dare to move. These fragments fight each other in silence, leaving us restless, confused, uncertain of who we truly are. Individuation is the process of calling every fragment home. It is not about killing the child within or rejecting the playful, eternal girl. It is about inviting her into dialogue with the woman you are becoming. It is about weaving the dreamer with the realist, the soft with the strong, the light with the shadow. Think of stained glass. Each piece alone is jagged, incomplete. But when arranged with care, the light passes through and a window of breathtaking beauty emerges. Individuation is that arrangement of your inner pieces. The light is your awareness. This path is not easy. It asks for surrender to discomfort, for confrontation with illusions, for acceptance of wounds. But it is the only path that leads to authentic maturity. To become yourself fully is to no longer wait for someone else to define you, to rescue you, or to tell you who you are. But to gather the fragments, we must begin with the most difficult act of all: radical self-honesty. Radical self-honesty. We all wear illusions like cloaks. I'm fine. I don't care. This is enough. Lies we whisper to ourselves to avoid the sting of truth. Radical honesty is terrifying because it strips away the story we've built. It shows us where we've been hiding, where we've been small, where we've been avoiding responsibility. Yet it is also liberating because only in truth can freedom exist. Ask yourself, what have I been pretending not to know? That my relationship drains me? That my job numbs me? That I've been living for others' approval and not my own soul? These questions burn, but they also purify. Jung believed that much of suffering comes from denial, the refusal to face what already lives within us. When you finally name the truth, the fog begins to lift. Suddenly, the weight you carried was not fate, but avoidance. Sit in silence and ask, where am I deceiving myself? Don't rush. The answers come like faint stars at first, dim, distant, but undeniable. And once you see them, you cannot unsee. Honesty hurts, but dishonesty destroys. True maturity demands we choose the burn of truth over the comfort of illusion. But even when we see the truth, another chain often binds us: the hunger for validation. From validation to value, validation is a drug, subtle yet powerful. A compliment, a like, a smile of approval. For many women, life has been built around this craving since childhood. Be sweet, be agreeable, be pleasing. Approval becomes oxygen, but the cost is heavy. When your worth depends on others' eyes, you are never free. You bend, shrink, shapeshift to stay loved. And in doing so, you abandon yourself. Maturity begins when validation is replaced with value. When your compass no longer points to applause, but to authenticity. This is the practice: to live as though no one is watching, and yet to live fully. To dress not for approval, but expression. To speak not for agreement, but truth. To love not to be chosen, but because love is who you are. Approval is fleeting, value is eternal. When you discover your value within, you no longer need rescuing, and you no longer need applause. you become free, and freedom leads us to balance, where inner feminine and masculine energies meet in harmony. Balancing the inner feminine and masculine within every soul lives two great forces: the feminine, intuition, receptivity, connection, flowing like water, and the masculine, structure, clarity, independence, rooted like stone. But the eternal girl resists her inner masculine. She stays passive, waiting, drifting. She fears structure, fearing it will confine her. And so she floats in endless fluidity, sensitive but unanchored. Maturity arrives when the two dance together. Imagine the river and its banks. Without the river, the banks are barren. Without the banks, the river floods and loses direction. Together, they create life. Your inner feminine whispers, trust, feel, surrender. Your inner masculine answers, act, decide, stand firm. To ignore one is to live half a life. To integrate both is to live whole. But harmony requires weight, the sacred weight of responsibility. The sacred weight of responsibility has been misunderstood. To the immature self, it feels like chains, a burden, a cage. But to the awakened self, responsibility is freedom. Why? Because when you claim responsibility, you stop waiting for someone else to fix your life. You stop blaming fate, parents, lovers, culture. You realize, I am the author, I am the heroine. My choices matter. Responsibility is not about perfection, it is about ownership. It is saying, if my life feels empty, I will fill it. If my path feels blocked, I will carve it. If I fall, I will rise again. There is dignity in responsibility, power, even beauty. Because responsibility is love in action, the willingness to shape the life your soul longs for. But what happens if we never choose this path? What is the true cost of eternal girlhood? The cost of eternal girlhood. To cling to eternal girlhood is to cling to a dream that never ripens. Yes, it looks light, playful, carefree, but beneath it lies dependency, restlessness, and fear. Partners may control or enable. Careers may stall. Identity remains fragile, tethered to youth, beauty, validation, and eventually the dream cracks. Aging arrives, illusions collapse. The fantasy of rescue fades. What remains is emptiness, a gnawing sense that life has been half-lived. Jung warned that what we avoid does not disappear, it waits. And the longer we delay, the more urgent its call becomes. Immaturity is not innocent, it is costly. It steals depth, freedom, authenticity. But the good news is this: the choice is always available. At any age, in any season, we can step out of eternal girlhood and into eternal selfhood. But why does culture tempt us to stay children forever? And how do we untangle ourselves from its web? The cultural web culture profits from immaturity. Youth sells, insecurity consumes, dependency obeys. An independent woman, wise, rooted, whole, cannot be manipulated. She cannot be sold the lie that she is never enough. So society rewards girlhood, the playful, the naive, the pleasing. Movies romanticize the clumsy innocent waiting for love. Social media glorifies soft voices, curated innocence, exaggerated dependence. Beauty industries fuel fear of aging, turning natural cycles into threats. This is not conspiracy, it is conditioning. And it works because it feeds the part of us that longs to stay safe, adored, childlike. But culture's web is not unbreakable. Individuation requires rebellion, not loud defiance, but quiet refusal to conform, refusal to shrink, refusal to trade depth for approval, refusal to believe that worth lives only in youth. And when you take that vow, you step into the final transformation. Becoming whole here is the culmination, the end of girlhood, the beginning of selfhood. Now see the woman who waits beyond her. She stands tall, grounded, radiant. She is not defined by beauty, approval, or rescue. She is defined by presence, by depth, by integration. This is maturity, not age, not conformity, but wholeness. It is knowing your shadow and your light, and carrying them both with grace. It is facing time not with fear, but with reverence. It is embracing responsibility not as burden, but as sacred freedom. You are not waiting anymore. You are not hiding. You are not pretending. You are whole, and in your wholeness, you are free. But how do we embody this in daily life? How do we live it, not just understand it? 10 practical ways to apply Jung's teachings. 1. Shadow journaling. Write what you suppress. Anger, desire, ambition. See them not as enemies, but as exiled friends returning home. 2. Small acts of responsibility. Choose one area daily where you take ownership instead of waiting for rescue. 3. Break the validation habit. Post less for approval. Pause before seeking praise. Ask, am I doing this for them or for me? 4. Confront fear of aging. Reflect weekly on wisdom gained with time. Treat each year as depth added, not beauty lost. 5. Practice independence. Make decisions alone. Travel solo. Trust your own judgment. Build resilience through experience. 6. Relationship audit. Ask, does this bond enable growth or dependency? Choose partners who challenge you to rise. 7. Integrate energies. Practice structure, masculine, alongside intuition, feminine. Create goals but leave room for flow. 8. Guided reflection. Daily sit in silence. Breathe. Whisper, I am the heroine of my own story. 9. Embrace discomfort. Seek small challenges intentionally. Growth hides where comfort ends. 10. Say the hard truth. Once a week, practice radical honesty with yourself and with someone you love. Carl Jung believed immaturity is not weakness, but avoidance. For women, society magnifies this avoidance, rewarding eternal girlhood. But through shadow work, individuation, and responsibility, immaturity dissolves. What remains is not the eternal girl, but the eternal self.